Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, taking place from the Walton Suite in the Winchester Guildhall. It's Wednesday, the 10th of January 2024, and the time is 9:30. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I am Chair of the Planning Committee. To my right is Councillor Edwards, who is Vice Chair of the Committee. Around the table we have the other elected members, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings from the planning team, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers starting with Megan Osborne, who will sit to my left, and Matthew Watson from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Now we turn to the agenda. First of all, apologies and deputy members, Matthew.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, members. No apologies, and all members of the committee are present this morning. Thank you.
Any disclosures of interests, members? Councillor Lee?
With reference to item 8, I'm the ward councillor, but there's no, I have no personal but no prejudicial interests in this application, and I have not been involved in any way. Thank you.
Councillor Reid?
Application 7, Chairman. I'm a ward councillor. I've had no contact with any of the proceedings at parish level.
Thank you. I also have a non-prejudicial interest in the first item on our agenda in Kingsworthy. It's my ward. Obviously, I know very well the site, but I've had no predetermination of this application. Right. Next is the minutes of the previous meeting. They're on the addendum sheet. Can I propose those as an accurate record of the meeting, please? Is that agreed? Can I just minute at this point, please, Matthew, that on page 7 of the minutes, under item 6, Councillor Reid raised a point of order that Councillor Ashwell had left the room for several minutes, and that is what was said at the meeting. But in fact, we have reviewed the video and recording of the meeting, and the actual absence was 30 seconds. So if we could minute that, please. Thank you. Can we also accept onto the agenda the update sheet? Is that agreed? Thank you. Right, we now move to the planning applications. The first application is item 6 on our agendas. It is the development of 7 dwellings and the formation of a new vehicular access at land to the east of Burnett Lane in Kingsworthy. And our presenting officer is Megan Osborne. Over to you, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to draw your attention first to the update sheet, which adds 2 conditions to the proposed decisions. One
Megan, I
condition,
can't hear you very well.
Sorry.
Can you?
one condition is for the Dormice Bridge, details of the Dormice Bridge to be provided before development commences. And the other additional condition that we're proposing is to remove permitted development rights for extensions and outbuildings on the site. There is also a change to the wording of 2 of the conditions, condition 18 and condition 20. Councillors did do a viewing site meeting yesterday, so they are familiar with the site, but I'll take you through it as well. This site is located within the village of Kingsworthy to the west of Springvale Road. There are houses backing onto the site to the east of this site. They front onto Springvale Road, and to the north, which houses also access from Springvale Road. To the south, there are houses on Tudor Way, which also access onto Springvale Road. To the west of this site is a development on Burnett Lane. This was permitted in 2019 for 35 affordable houses. This proposal is accessed from Burnett Lane. The proposed development is accessed from the end of a dead end area on Burnett Lane to the site across a grassed area. Winchester City Council own this land and have allowed the right of access across this. This is an aerial photo, and you can see the development to the west of Burnett Lane being constructed at the time this photo was taken. And the red line is the proposed site. The application site is for the development of 7 dwellings. It's within the development boundary of Kingsworthy. This is a mix of semi-detached dwellings and detached dwellings. They are 2 2-bedroom houses, 2 3-bedroom houses, and 3 4-bedroom houses. There's proposed parking in front of the dwellings of the site and garages, and this meets the parking standards. Just take you through some of the elevations. This is the elevation for plot 1 and plot 2, semi-detached dwelling. It has red brick, clay tile hanging on the first floor level and red clay tiles on the roof. And this is the floor plan. These are the 2-bedroom units. No, they're not, sorry, they're the 3-bedroom units. And this is plot 3 and 4, the 1.5 story dwellings with slate roofs and red brick. And these are the floor plans. These are the 2-bed units. And then moving on to plot 5, further down the site. This is the detached dwelling with a slate roof and clay tile hanging. And this is the floor plans, the 4-bed unit. And plot 6, again, red brick, tile hanging, and then clay tiles roof. And this again is a 4-bed dwelling. And then lastly, plot 7 with a integral garage, clay tile hanging, slate roof, and red brick. And the floor plan, and this is a 4-bedroom house as well. Just take you through some photos. So to the left of the screen is the access into the site. So this is currently from Burnett Lane development with the houses on either side of this road, and it goes forward to the sites there. And on the bottom right hand side of the screen is Springvale Road. The site is to the right of this. You can't see it, but these are new dwellings, newish dwellings on the right hand side there. The one on the top of the screen is the footpath that runs around Burnett Lane currently. And to the bottom is a view from the dwellings to the north of the application site, looking south. This is the proposed ecology plan for the site. There is a green buffer around the site for ecology links. The application also proposes a dormouse bridge across the site, which is the red bit across the access. Zoe Keeble is here from Ecology, Winchester City Council, if you want to answer, she wants to answer any questions regarding ecology. This is an example of a dormouse bridge. There is a wider ecology plan for the area. It proposes mitigation on the area of Topfield. This has been agreed by Winchester City Council ecologists and forms part of the legal agreement that is being drafted. In conclusion, it's considered that the development is acceptable. The applicant has worked with officers amending plans which result in a scheme that can now be supported. The scheme meets a housing mix of 50% 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings. There's a mix of dwelling types on the site. The impact to neighbours and amenities has been assessed, and this would not result in any material planning harm. There were no highway objections, and this meets the parking standards. The ecology concerns have been addressed in the proposals. Overall, the scheme is well designed and will create a distinctive addition for the local area. The application is therefore considered acceptable, subject to conditions proposed and a legal agreement regarding the off-site ecology mitigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now move to the public speaking elements. And our first speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Jackie Porter. Jackie, you will have 5 minutes, as you know. Thank you. When you're ready, the timer will start.
Thank you very much. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my ward councillor, Councillor Crimoyson. And I'm also registering a non-prejudicial interest because I'm chairman of the Watercress Way, and the Watercress Way extends across this site, or not actually the site itself, but on Topfield. So I thank Winchester City Council for the update and the time that was spent looking at the ecology last week with Councillor Crimoyson and I. And the update sheet placed on the meeting agenda regarding those biodiversity net gain conditions makes a lot of difference. So thank you very much indeed. The paper addresses most of the issues that fellow Councillor Crimoyson and I have raised regarding the ecology and access, but I'd just like to address one point in my presentation today on biodiversity. And it's an issue of how we maintain this biodiversity net gain for 30 years. I have raised it with the developer, and I know that Councillor Crimoyson did too. So I'd really appreciate someone addressing how we can be certain that that biodiversity net gain offered by the developer, as stated, is secure for those 30 years. The biodiversity of Topfield is of great importance on this site, and Winchester City Council have been championing it for ever since really it's been taken over. So I think it's important to Winchester City Council as well. And so I'd just like the developers of the site to explain how they'll ensure that biodiversity net gain will be in place for 30 years when the corridor will be behind each of the properties. So if you see they're behind the properties. This actually is going to be a problem that's going to be common to all applications going forward in 2024. So it's of key interest to all of us really. And the second point that's been raised by many people in the objections, and actually since those objections have been made, some amendments have been made to the design. So the footpath has been moved further to the left as we're looking here to the west. Access via Burnet Lane is disappointing to many residents in the Hookbrook Farm Lane area. And they accept what's going on, but they are disappointed, and they had expected not to have any development from Topfield site. So I'd be grateful if the developer or the officer can explain why the access via Burnet Lane has been the final choice of access and not chewed away as the community had hoped. Losing even that pedestrian link is a great shame for all of us, I think. So that's my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Members, do we have any questions of clarification from the local member? Councillor Lee, your microphone is on. Could you just switch it off if you're not? Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Councillor Porter, thank you for your comments. Commuted sums, presumably nowhere on this site commuted sums have been discussed presumably there aren't any. But would that be correct?
I don't know of any commuted sums. I haven't been involved in those conversations, but perhaps the officers can answer that question.
So I therefore ask when we come to the officers' point.
At the appropriate moment. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Any other questions for Councillor Porter? Councillor, I've got a question. So at the time of the agreement to develop the rest of Burnett Lane, that's an exception site. So that's still outside the development area of the village. And it's a city council, they're all council houses now, those at the top. Wasn't there an agreement that, perhaps this is a question for the officer, I'll ask it of the officer, don't worry, thank you. Okay, any other questions? No, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Porter. Next we have two supporters, Stuart Garnett and Davog McCloskey, if you'd like to come forward. I assume just one of you will speak, which?
That'd be me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garnett, yes. If you have 3 minutes between you, I assume your colleague is to help answer any questions.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you very much. When you're ready.
Good. Good morning. I'm Stuart Garnett, Head of Planning at Shorewood Homes. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak this morning and for your officer's comprehensive and balanced report, which we're pleased recommends approval. This has been a very lengthy application because, as the officer report notes, there was a need to secure nutrient neutrality due to Natural England guidance coming out at the time this application was submitted back in 2022. I'm delighted that the nutrient mitigation, compensatory dormouse habitat, and a significant biodiversity net gain has all now been achieved, and importantly, to the satisfaction of your ecologist. Our ecologist, Davog McCloskey from Peach Ecology, is here with me today, available to answer any questions you might have. This application is supplemented by enhancing an area of nearby land with its long-term management secured through a Section 106 legal agreement. The landscape and ecological enhancements have been subject to very full and comprehensive discussions with your officers, with details of all the proposed measures set out in our ecology report accompanying this application and referenced at draft condition 14. The proposals are for just 7 traditionally designed family homes, situated entirely within the existing settlement boundary on an area of unused and overgrown private land surrounded by existing housing. Members are hopefully aware that Shorewood Homes has already built 2 high-quality schemes in Kingsworthy, one at Springvale Rise and the other at Mortimer Close, and we'd look to emulate that success here. We have had ongoing positive discussions with your officers at both the pre-application and planning application stages to enhance the proposals before you today. This includes providing an opportunity to safeguard future pedestrian links through the site towards Springvale Road. We welcome Kingsworthy Parish Council writing in to support the application. And finally, there are no objections from statutory consultees relating to technical matters such as highways and trees, and I very much hope members will be able to agree with the officer recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions for the developer? Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. Looking at the schematics, I'm not seeing the provision of solar PV. So I wonder if you could just talk about some of the energy aspects that you're aspiring to put on the site, please.
Thank you. Ordinarily, there'd be a condition attached to these decisions, and I believe that there's one included on here which covers things such as the sustainability measures, water efficiency, things like solar panels and so on will be picked up at that stage.
I have a question. Councillor Porter asked about how the biodiversity net gain is going to be maintained for 30 years. Perhaps your ecology consultant could tell us that.
Hi. Excuse me. Yeah, so it's divided into two parts. There's the buffer area around the development, and then there's the wider area at Topfield. The buffer area, I understand, is being, we've drawn up an agreement, or we're drawing up an agreement for that to be managed by a third-party company, whereas the wider area in Topfield will be managed by Winchester Council. Would you like to know, sorry, how that will be done?
Yes, is that possible?
Sorry.
Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. Yes, it's well, it's being managed at the minute. Topfield is being managed for its biodiversity. It's split into lots of different habitats. Some of those areas are being funded. Some areas aren't being managed. We've highlighted a few specific areas that would be better for biodiversity in general, as well as for dormice as well.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Lee?
Yes, I wonder if I could just follow up on that. So this is going to be managed for 30 years, is that correct?
That's correct.
By the company that you've referred to?
No, the Topfield area will be managed by the council. That's
Right.
what we're negotiating at the minute.
Okay, so you're no involvement in that at all? It's the
We've
council.
written the management plan.
You've
for
written
it.
the management plan?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gordon-Smith?
Yes, I'm curious about how the buffer zone around the houses is going to work. Are they at the back? They're at the back of the gardens, aren't they? Is there a fence around these gardens?
There's a fence between the gardens and buffer zone,
Right. Okay.
and the buffer zone is about 5 meters wide. So that's been designed so that it's accessible and suitable to be used as a sort of wildlife area and as a
Yes, I know. I see the purpose. Yes, I just wondered about the practicalities of it. And I did notice on the site yesterday that someone had done a bit of a land grab from one of the adjacent houses, and whether that might be how much that might be controlled. Because people have a funny attitude towards what they see as. I mean, you and I would consider it a useful buffer zone, but they just see it as a load of brambles.
well, yeah, I think that'll be part of the management, having that monitored so that it doesn't, just become, a pile of brambles. Although, in its place, there definitely will be some brambles because that'll add to the to the wildlife value of it.
Right, thank you.
Just to add on that, then, as Davog has said, if you just turn your mic. As Davog has said, within the ecology report, which is referenced at condition 14, there's a whole suite of management measures. So that includes about the ongoing measures within that buffer zone to make sure that fences and so on are all protected, that they're not claimed by future residents, and that's all covered within the management agreement.
Thank you. I have a question about the access. So it does, as a layperson, it does seem rather crazy that you're going all the way around Springvale Road, past the Tesco Express, all the way up Hookpit Farm Lane, all the way up a very steep access road into Burnett Lane, along Burnett Lane through the estate, and then down through this new access. When at a glance at the map, an extension of Tudor Way would have enabled you to go literally a few hundred meters onto Springvale Road. Could you explain that, please?
Absolutely. Tudor Way is a private road. We'd have no ability to come through and have access from that. Megan might want to talk about that there is a live planning application on the site adjacent through Tudor Way, which has been with the council for some time. We've looked at the access options coming in to the site. That was subject to quite a lot of discussions with the authority throughout the pre-application and the application stage. And as you can see from the plan, that what we've done is we've safeguarded land, that there's an area between those properties, between plots 4 and 5, where there is provision that enables a future pedestrian link. The planning officers were very keen that that is safeguarded. From the access via Burnett Lane, then we know that that's satisfactory. From a highways perspective, there's no technical issues. So this is the basis on which application is made, and we are aware that from the highways engineers it works. Should the situation change in the future, for example, if the Tudor Way site was to come forward for development, then there is the ability that it could connect, but it's not within our gift to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Leaming, thank you.
Going back onto the access. Burnett Lane is an unadopted road. So I presume that the council will have to maintain that. As you'll be using that, will the residents be expected to contribute to the upkeep of that road?
I'm not aware whether that's the position. I know that from the design within the site, that we've designed it to allow for refuse vehicles, etc., to come within the site and turn. We've not had the discussions with the authority that suggest any contributions need to be made.
Perhaps we can ask the officer that, Councillor Leaming. Councillor, this is your third bite of the cherry, Councillor Leaming.
Sorry, yes. I just want to pick up on the electric vehicle charging. Can you just explain exactly what we're talking about? Is it per house, or is it just a communal facility?
That might be a question better directed to the planning officers.
Okay, I thought you might say that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done with questions for clarification. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. You may return to your seats. Now we come back to our planning officer, Megan. Have you got anything you'd like to add following the public contributions, please?
Yes, I would. I'd like to refer to Zoe regarding the biodiversity net gain in terms of the 30-year management scheme, if possible. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks. Oh, I'll just move a little bit closer. Yeah, so just to build on what Davog explained there briefly in answer to some of those questions, is that for that 30-year period, the landscape and ecological management plan is quite thorough. So it has specific actions right from year 1 to year 30, which includes annual cutting, minimum heights of vegetation, ensuring connectivity for dormice. So it's really quite detailed in the actions it prescribes, and that links to biodiversity net gain, which basically means the scrub has to reach a sort of good condition in order to achieve what the metric has set out to achieve. And these specific measures are what will guarantee sort of reaching that condition, as it were. So that report, or that LEMP, as we call it, Landscape Ecological Management Plan, is being conditioned, and then for the off-site mitigation, that will be subject to the legal agreement, so that will be tied in for that 30-year period as well. And as it's been alluded to, Winchester will take on that management, and it will feed into our regular management plan, so we will ensure that that is delivered.
Can I just add some more, if possible? Thank you, Chair. I think the other points raised by Councillor Porter were covered by Stuart in terms of the access and the footpath. I can answer any more questions if councillors have them later on. Regarding, sorry, going back to the ecology, we're jumping around a bit. The condition 13, I'd like to add a small section if possible. I didn't put this in the update sheet. I apologise. In paragraph 1.1 of the ecology report, it says about an ecology management of the site, a company to be managing the site. I'd just like to add the wording of that within the condition 13.
Okay, I think that's agreed, members. Yeah. Thank you.
And then referring to the electric charging points, we don't have specific details of how many on the site is. The condition asks for details to be submitted regarding the electric charging points on the site. This is details required regarding our SBD. So we will assess that when those details come in.
Thank you. Is that the end of your updates? Thank you. All right, members, I'll accept questions on any part of the report. If you could just give the page number when you ask your question, that would be helpful. Do you have any questions? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question that was put at the site meeting. When you look at the access road going down, across the top of the trees, you can see a very large tree or trees. I'm not too sure whether it was one or two. And that's only identified on page 35 on the top photograph, which shows this growth, which is quite prominent. What is the position with regard to that particular growth there? Is it being protected or is it going to be taken out? I must admit, when we were actually in the wooded area, it was very difficult to find. It's only from a distance that you could actually identify it.
Megan?
It's hard to identify, as you say, which tree that is. There are some small trees being removed at the beginning of the access to the site. So you can see on this plan here, if you can see it properly. Then there was the tree that was covered in ivy that is being removed. That possibly could be that tree. That is being removed for to accommodate plot number 7. But there is a group of trees being retained on the site, which I also pointed out to you on site.
Councillor Laming.
Yes, I'd like to come back to the access point on this. As I understand it, the Burnett Lane is an unadopted road. So will this site be required to make some provision for maintenance on it?
Nothing has been specified from the Highways Authority, and it hasn't been required to make a contribution. Yes, you're right. You're correct in that Burnett Lane hasn't been adopted. So I'm assuming this site and road wouldn't be adopted either. But unfortunately, I don't know about the contributions. I don't. As far as I'm concerned, they don't require any contributions.
So it's going to be Winchester paying for the maintenance on that road. The other thing that concerns me is the access by foot to the estate, because if you wish to use sustainable transport, the buses and that is a hell of a hike, and people with young children would find that hill very, very difficult to get up as well. Have we considered any other form of access to the site to make sure that they can get to the bus services and that without getting too muddy?
As Mr. Garnett did explain, that the footpath in the site has potential to link onto Tudor Way, but unfortunately we've got no control over the land on Tudor Way at this present moment, or potentially in the future. So there is potential to do that, but at the moment there are no other linkages. It's a long Burnett Lane and down that steep hill at the moment.
But there is another linkage.
Sorry, there are footpaths on Burnett Lane which link down to Springvale Road, yes.
Along the Watercress Way.
I stand corrected, yes.
Which we spent a lot of money properly surfacing, didn't we?
We did, but they're amazing.
Okay, thank you. Are there some other questions that were raised at the site visit, members? Can we remember? Councillor Ashwell first.
Thank you, Chair. Regards to the management of the trees on the site itself, in the future, would the parish council be taking that over?
The trees on the site?
Yeah, and the shrubbery and everything.
So that would be managed by a management company, which has been conditioned in the ecology report.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee?
Yes, the question I asked on site, looking at the site, is obviously on quite a slope. And my question was about landscaping. If I remember correctly, you indicated that the slope would be maintained, so we won't be terracing the site. And I also see on page 25, para 11, we're asking for the standard response to ensure satisfactory provision of foul and surface water drainage. So really, I think I'm clear on that. But what are there flooding risks in the area? And given our recent experiences across the district, are we going to be seeking a little bit more in terms of contingent approaches to ensure that this site does not suffer from flooding and adequate drainage.
As you said, that there's condition 11, which requires the details to be submitted in terms of the drainage. And we will be assessing that once that's been submitted. But the developer has said soakaways will be provided on each plot, and there'll be a permeable road surface within the site. And if any attenuation under the roadway is needed, this will be provided. This evidence will be provided via condition 11, and if that is needed, we will request it.
Okay, can I ask about the period of construction? We've got various conditions about construction. Are we confident that these will keep construction vehicles on the construction site and not allow them to park and get in the way of near neighbours?
We haven't had the finer details yet, but that would be something I'd be looking at closely to keep it away from the neighbours and the construction on the site as much as possible.
Councillor Lee?
You're recognising that the site is 1 kilometre from South Downs, and whenever we have developments, light is an issue, and I appreciate it is some distance. But can you talk about the light mitigating plans for the site, please?
There is a condition regarding light, number 15, regarding details of the lighting to be proposed on the site, and this will be assessed when the information is submitted.
Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Chair. The question I first raised was with Councillor Porter's comments regarding commuted sums. Are there no commuted sums at all on this site or attached to any other site that may well have joined it in the past? Presumably that's why the parish council are possibly not that interested in taking it on. But I'll wait for the answer.
There is a commuted sum regarding ecology, which has been added to the legal agreement.
Chair, just to confirm, it's a monitoring fee contribution for monitoring the clauses of the legal agreement. That will be the sum that's required.
But there are no other contributions required.
Can I ask about the access road? Can you just explain why it hasn't been adopted by the Highways Authority? And also this question of a contribution towards the maintenance of the road. At the moment, the cost of maintenance of that road will fall on the City Council, won't it? Is there no question of asking for a contribution towards that?
I believe the road wasn't adopted because of the steepness of the first bit of Burnett Lane. Is it the first bit's called Burnett Lane as well? And they didn't want to adopt this road. I don't know any other details regarding that. That would be a question for Hampshire County Council, I'm sorry. And the contribution that could, Lorna?
The County Council have very strict sort of and high requirements for the engineering of the road, and I believe it's probably the steepness of it in this case, but that is a private road, and it's we've just been discussing it, the ability for a new development that might share that access to then contribute into some other development, and it's actually quite difficult legally in terms of the mechanisms. It's not something we do. I'm not sure if you've got any more specific questions on that, but
so, Chair, there's two types of road. Obviously, those that are adopted and maintained at public expense, and that's Hampshire County Council. The others are private roads. Now, ordinarily, private roads are, in this particular instance, owned by the freeholder, but the law does allow for frontages. So those private properties that front onto a private road to also have an obligation to maintain. So it's between the owner of the private road and those houses which are the frontages, the private houses, to maintain. Hence why we have that distinction in law between those that are maintainable at public expense and those which are private, which would be the owner of the road and the frontages.
Right. Okay. Any more questions on the report, please, members? No. Councillor Lee.
I just want to go back to ecology, if I may. But there is widespread acknowledgement that the biodiversity net gain should be more than just a number, and I think we recognise that, and we discussed it on site yesterday. So the baseline habitat conditions have been verified. The habitat that we're looking to protect, I guess, is registered. But I'm still not clear about the monitoring and the maintenance and the due diligence in ensuring that that's properly done and implemented. And then what happens after 30 years? I wonder if you can just clarify that for me, please.
Chair, I'm just going to start by just trying to make it simple. I think on site, we've got a condition that requires the management company and the details of the manager's areas to demonstrate how that is kept in perpetuity or for 30 years. And then off site, we've got the legal agreement that deals with those two things. That's it in a nutshell, I think.
Thanks. And then, yeah, just to add that those secure those sort of management and monitoring for the 30 years. Biodiversity net gain doesn't specify what would happen after 30 years, but I think obviously we're going to have conditions that mean that the management company takes on the management of that buffer, and Winchester will be taking on the management, already does manage that wider Hook Pit site. So I would imagine it would carry on past the 30 years, but what's specified in the LEMP is that standard 30-year period. Thanks.
Can I just clarify? I believe that all the open space, including the ecology buffer zones and everything, are going to be a field in trust. Is that correct?
There is an application in for a fields and trust for the wider Hook Pit site, which will include that off-site mitigation area. It doesn't include this red line boundary or this proposal.
So we've got one more point we'd like to add. There's a lot moving forward with the government, and so I am putting a paper together so there'll be full training on all these issues, because it's very complex in terms of off-site management, legal agreements, on-site protected species mitigation, etc. So that will come forward, and inviting Zoe here today is part of that. And in terms of some of these really technical matters, Dan's just going to make a further comment on that, just to conclude on that.
I think Councillor Porter raised the key point, and that is obviously during the 30-year period, the developer may sell the site. And I think the issue is, where's the degree of comforture? If the site is sold, how do we ensure that 30-year continuity? And I think that's a very square, fair question put by Councillor Porter. The point is, Section 106 binds not only the owner of the land, so here the owner will be bound to perform, if you like, the off-site top field LEMP provisions, the Landscape Ecology Management Plan. As soon as they give that covenant and they're bound by Section 106, by operation of law, Section 106 says it also binds successors in title. So if the developer was to dispose of the site to the north, the actual subject site, this legal agreement will bind any successor. So those that then take on that particular obligation is also bound, because Section 106 makes it quite clear. So that protects, if you like, the top field area, the off-site aspects for that 30-year period. The next obvious question is, well, what about down the on-site aspects and the buffer and the Dormice Bridge? And you've heard Zoe and Megan here say that's going to be controlled by condition. And today you've enhanced that condition by adding in details for a management company. I think paragraph 1.1 of the LEMP was referred to go into that condition. So that suite, that package of control ensures that not only during the 30-year period, on-site and top field off-site is maintained, but it will also capture any successor in title. So you can have that degree of comforture that if the site is disposed of, sold to a different developer to build out the scheme, those conditions and the covenant in the 106 will actually bind for you.
Councillor Laming.
Yes, I'd like to come back to highways. The junction onto Springvale Road is always very dodgy with the amount of traffic being used. The Tesco's Minimart has always been the same ever since it was first built. So is there any mitigation that we need to put in for that?
The Highways Authority were consulted as part of this application and raised no concerns regarding that junction. I know there has been concerns regarding it in the past, but in terms of this development, there was no objections raised.
Fine, so if that's the end of questions on the report, members, we move to debate. Who would like to kick off debate? Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Chair. It seemed to me that there are three major issues that we've been debating. The first one is the location, the second is access, and the third is everything to do with ecology and biodiversity. I understand from comments which Councillor Cromoyson made to the initial application or last year's application for this site, that there had been an expectation amongst some residents that there would be no further development on Topfield, and then some apprehension that this development was somehow in conflict with that view that they had acquired. But we have heard that this site is not within Topfield, although the housing site is not, where a small part of the access road would be. The houses themselves are built within the settlement boundary and in other locations might be considered as infill development. The trade-off then between a small piece of Topfield land and the creation of 7 new houses seems to me a reasonable one. On the question of access, my personal concern is permeability. My ward, and I think much of the city, is plagued by small developments which don't have any active travel permeability, requiring very, very long detours for people to talk to their neighbours. So I'm very reassured to see that the footpath here relates to the extant planning permission on the adjacent site at Tudor Way. And I would strongly urge the developers, as this goes forward, to cooperate as much as possible should that development be realised, and make sure that the permeability is as appropriate and attractive and safe and so on as possible. I think that's really important. I accept that there are constraints on what can be done about vehicle permeability between the sites. And the third area is ecology, where we have heard about the mitigation that will be provided on Topfield site, which has been, as I understand it, secured by the council in recent years. It has been developed as a wildlife area of a biodiversity net gain. That site seems entirely justified as a way forward. The buffer zone also is, I think, significant. I haven't seen this approach taken in many other developments. I think it'll be really attractive, not only for the dormice, but also for the residents of these houses and the surrounding ones. It'll provide an aesthetic barrier, if you like, between the new development and its neighbours. So I'm minded to support this development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd just like to say I'm pleased that we're now removing permitted development rights for outbuildings and extensions for these new homes, because I think the potential for the buffer zone to be nibbled at is thereby reduced, and it is quite a tight development in terms of efficient use of the land available. It doesn't mean that nobody can build anything. It just means that it has to be properly assessed before being given permission, which I think is right and proper in this case. I'm also reassured that residents of Burnet Lane will have as little disruption as possible during the construction period. That Shorewood Homes will ensure that construction traffic remains on the site and isn't allowed to park up on the housing estate behind to disrupt people's lives, as often happens. So I hope that they will take note of that particular concern as well. inevitably there will be some disruption because of construction traffic moving through the estate. And again, I hope that they will show huge consideration to existing residents doing that. But in terms of construction, I think it is clear that this is not allowing more development on Topfield. It is allowing houses to be built in an infill site, an area of scrubland, which is of no real merit in terms of trees and so on. And in fact, that will be enhanced by the planting proposed in the landscaping plan. So taking all into account, and I think it is crazy that the access has to go through Burnet Lane, but it is what it is, and Tudor Way is a private road, and that's just not been possible to use that as the access. In an ideal world, that would have been the sensible thing to do. We don't, sadly, live in an ideal world. We live in the real world, and this, I think, is the best that we could hope for in the real world. Shorewood have a good reputation locally and wish to keep that, I'm sure. So we'll be a very considerate constructor. So I'm content to accept and support the officer recommendation. If there's no more contributions to debate, we will move to the decision. So this application is recommended for permission. Can I see those in favour, please? That's all members. Thank you very much. We'll now take a quick 10-minute break, comfort break, and return just after past. Thank you. Okay, members, if you could take your seats again, please. And we will look at the next item on our agenda. Item number 7, which is an outline application for the phased development of up to 6 self-build and custom house building plots, with all matters reserved except for access. And this is at land south of School Lane in Denmead in Hampshire. And our presenting officer is Liz Young. If you could give us your presentation, please, Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this relates to a proposal for the phased development of up to 6 custom and self-build units to be delivered on an area of grazing land just outside the settlement of Denmead. Just moving to the first slide, this slide just shows the location plan for the site. It's accessed via a field gate off School Lane, which you can see just to the north of the site, just here. It's adjoined to the west and to the south by open fields. The southeast boundaries are joined by detached residential property and Till Cottage. This slide just shows an aerial view of the site, which is marked by the yellow star. The red lines indicate the locations of public rights of way, the closest one being about 60 metres to the west. The purple line just shows the settlement boundary of Denmead, which is about 60 metres off to the east. So as you can see, the site lies in open countryside. This next slide just shows an existing site plan. The site itself has an established equestrian use. There's no significant build development in the site at present. It amounts to just under half a hectare in size. The roadside boundary to the north is enclosed by hedgerow, while the southeast boundary is enclosed by a number of mature trees and some hedgerow. The boundary to the west is enclosed a bit more open. It's enclosed by post and rail fencing. So this is just an illustrative layout of the proposed development, as this is an outline application with all matters reserved. So this would enable occupants to choose their serviced building plots and then through a reserved matters application design and customise their proposed dwelling. There would be 6 units in total. The southernmost is intended to be occupied by the applicant. This next slide just shows the parameter plan, which shows basically the proposed hard surfacing areas, the areas of built development and the landscaping arrangements. The blue feature you can see to the top of the site would be a sustainable drainage feature. On the boundary with School Lane, an area of hedgerow would be removed to provide the required level of visibility. The orange shaded areas are the areas of potential built development within the site for each plot, and the red hatched areas are the potential garage locations. This next slide just shows the community infrastructure levy phasing plan, which has been included to enable each plot to apply for an exemption from SIL. So the proposed access road and communal open areas would be built as the first phase. Just moving on to the photos. This first photo just shows the view as you approach the application site, coming towards the access, which is on the left. So that's just this area here. This next photo just shows the view of the access itself. As I mentioned, the proposal is to remove a section of hedgerow, approximately 20 metres in total to provide the necessary level of visibility. School Lane itself is subject at this point to a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit. This photo is taken from within the site, looking towards the west boundary and back towards School Lane, which is just beyond the hedgerows. This photo is taken looking back towards the south, so towards the rear boundary of the site. This photo is just taken from the rear boundary, looking south onto the adjacent fields. And this photo is just looking down the length of the west boundary, looking north back towards School Lane. This is another photo looking back towards the hedgerow which runs along the boundary with School Lane. You can see a bit more closely. And this is taken from the rear boundary, from the south boundary. Again, looking back towards the School Road boundary and the access, which you can just see there where the parked car is. This is the view looking east back towards the site access. You can see the two fairly prominent trees which are on the southeast boundary of the site. This just shows the view looking towards the boundary of the neighbouring property, Ants Hill Cottage. This final photo just shows another view of the access. That brings us to the end of the slides. In conclusion, the recommendation is that planning permission should be refused. The primary reason for this is the location of the development in open countryside. Alongside this, there's concerns over the visual impact of the development, but also impacts on trees and hedgerows. The concerns over the location of the development and its visual impact are also consistent with those that were raised onto previous planning decisions on this site. So that brings us to the end of the slides. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liz, we now move to the public speaking. First, we have two objectors, Martin Cooper and Linda Reed. If you'd like to come forward, please. Thank you. You will have 3 minutes between you. Is one of you going to speak and the other help answer questions, or are you going to share the time? Okay. I'll leave it up to you how you share the time, but a timer will appear on the screen. There we are. And we'll start when you're ready. If you'd like to switch on the microphone in front of you, if you're going to start, Mr. Cooper. Lovely. When you're ready. Thank you.
I'm Martin Cooper. I've lived in School Lane for 20 years, not far from the site of the proposed development. My wife and I were attracted to this rural location. We now have a hedgehog hibernating in our garden, foxes and badgers visit nightly, and we regularly see deer in the field opposite. Most people moved here for the same reason we did: tranquility and the rural environment. People like the area the way it is. That's why they moved there and are now objecting to this application. 86 local people took the time to write an objection. That's quite a lot, given that it's not a densely populated area. This 1 acre plot was originally part of a much larger 15 acre field used for grazing horses. This, together with another field, was part of an 80 acre stud farm. Most objectors said this proposal will destroy a greenfield site, its wildlife, and worse, set a precedent for the owners of adjacent fields to follow. And this 80 acres of green fields will become a housing estate. I'm sure even the applicant wouldn't want that. Many objectors expressed irritation that someone from outside the area would buy an acre field, knowing it wasn't building land, and then try to obtain planning consent to build 5, now 6 houses on it. Not once, but 3 times. It is understandable that the applicants want to build their dream home and 5 others, but they are trying to do it in the wrong place. There are other plots available for building, but not at equine land prices. And that is the driver here, profit over the environment. Thank you for listening.
I've lived in Denmead for 35 years. I fully support Winchester's and Denmead Parish Council recommending refusal of this application. We should abide by Denmead boundaries as approved in the local plan. There are debates between the applicant's agent and Winchester concerning the interpretation of some of the planning policies, which policy has more weight and the statistics used in the application of those policies. There's mention by the agent of a tilted balance in favour, but personally, I don't think this is supposed to be a just match. What is at stake here is the conservation of the countryside. The third attempt, they now have a stated desire to provide opportunity for discounted building plots, which is a contrived attempt to find an elusive planning loophole. It appears to me to be nothing more than a smokescreen. This development would become the thin edge of a wedge in this area. And
That's the end of your 3 minutes, but thank you very much.
Nurture, not nature.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for our two local residents? No, I think you were both very clear. If you could just switch off that microphone, that's lovely, and return to your seats. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions. Thank you. We now have the Parish Council representative, Councillor Kevin Andrioli. Good morning, Councillor Andrioli. You know the routine. You will have 3 minutes when you're ready and you've started speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Happy New Year, members. The application is contrary to policy MTRA 4 of the District Local Plan Part 1 and of the Denmead Neighbourhood Plan, as it will result in new dwellings in a countryside location with no justification or operational need identified. The application does not meet the criteria of policies MTRA 2 or MTRA 3, as the proposal will be outside of the defined settlement boundary and does not meet a community need. We consider that self and custom build are not affordable housing as defined within the local plan and are considered market housing. The site is greenfield land and should not be prioritised over land within settlement boundaries as per the current Denmead Neighbourhood Plan. The application planning statement admits that policy MTRA 4 is not met, but states that it complies with MTRA 2 for the reason that there is no suitable alternative site within the settlement boundary. This is factually incorrect, and there are several suitable sites within the settlement boundary. One example being the land at Green Lane, which has been accepted as a future development site. This land does not have a care home on it, as stated by the applicant's planning consultant. The application is contrary to policies DM15, DM16 and DM23 of the District Local Plan Part 2, as the general character of the area is for large dwellings in generous plots. The proposed layout and density of the application is akin to development within the settlement boundary rather than a rural development. It would introduce a suburban and incongruous form of domestic development in a rural location, which would cause significant and substantial harm to the character and visual amenity of the area. It would also set a precedent for other landowners to apply to develop their land in a similar way. The application does not accord with the national government's sustainable location policy, which states that new development should be within 15 to 20 minutes walking distance from amenities. The site is considerable distance from the village centre along a non-pedestrianised lanes at around a 30-minute walk for a mobile adult. Denmead is not in a position to allocate a self-build site until the neighbourhood plan is updated, and only then if the Winchester local plan is amended from its current policy of no development on greenfield land until at least 2031. We support the operator's recommendation and ask you to as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Members, any questions or clarification? Councillor Gordon-Smith.
There seems to be a bit of a dispute about the availability of land. You said there are several other sites, including Green Lane, but the planning statement listed, I think, about 8 sites and said they were all no longer available. Is it possible to clarify that situation?
Yeah, certainly. There are 4 sites which are inside the development boundary, 2 of which were allocated by the neighbourhood plan, 2 of which were already inside the boundary and are therefore assumed to be available. One of which is on Green Lane. Now, their application says they can't use Green Lane, a site at Green Lane, because it's got a care home on it. Well, the care home predates the neighbourhood plan. There is a site on Green Lane, albeit rather overgrown, which is available, and there are at least 3 other sites, some of which have been mentioned in the neighbourhood plan, which have yet to come forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Andrea. You may return to your seat. Thank you. We next have the ward councillor, Councillor Paula Langford-Smith. Good morning, Paula.
Good morning.
You know the routine. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. We've seen applications come forward for the development of this site several times in the last few years. They have always been refused as they are contrary to policy. This application is again contrary to Winchester's planning policy CP15 and CP16, as it fails to protect and enhance the biodiversity and would result in significant harm. The applicant seeks to assure you that the project has the full support of local people. It does not. Those supporting the application are from as far away as Bedford and Nuneaton. You can see the number of local objections that there are against this application. There has not been local consultation. Due to the nature of Denmead, there are a significant proportion of the population that are not on Facebook. The only consultation has been via Facebook. This application provides for 3 plots for affordable housing. The Council's Strategic Housing Market Assessment of 2020 considered that the majority of the calculated need to be in the north of the district and in Winchester town. The Strategic Housing Market Assessment notes that it will be important for the Council to ensure that such homes are sold at a price that is genuinely affordable for the intended target group, and any discount should be held in perpetuity, paragraph 5.8.6. And it is not clear how the proposed 20% discount will relate to local incomes, para 5.87. Denmead Parish Council have recently had an ACOM housing needs assessment as part of our preparation for the neighbourhood plan. The plan is being updated in June 2022, so that's when the ACOM assessment was done. This assessment showed that even with a 30% discount to open market prices, first homes would not be affordable for households with an average income in the Denmead area. Therefore, this application does not provide truly affordable homes. In addition, the 3 affordable plots are significantly smaller in size than the other plots, and this committee has refused applications previously that had a different size of market housing to affordable. The Emerging Neighbourhood Plan aims to allocate sites for self-build, so we ask that this is taken into consideration. The plan is also being developed with the lens of climate change in mind and is aiming that all development should be within 1 kilometre of village amenities. This site is 1,873 metres from the co-op in the village. It's 2,456 metres from the infant school and 2,670 metres from the junior school. It's not in a sustainable location. The development will cause significant loss of approximately 20 metres of hedgerow and have a significant impact on veteran oak trees. Both ancient trees and hedgerow are critical for biodiversity and provide invaluable habitats for nature. It therefore contravenes the legal requirements of the Wildlife and Countryside Act of 1981 relating to habitat regulations. It seeks to create an incongruous development that is not in keeping and does not relate well to its countryside setting, which will also impact the setting of a public right-of-way. It is in designated countryside, and the applicant has not demonstrated a need for the dwelling to be in the countryside, and it is therefore against policy MTRA 4, as well as the Denmead Neighbourhood Plan. On behalf of the residents of Denmead, I ask you to refuse this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Langford-Smith. Any questions, members? Councillor Reid.
Paula, you mentioned the walking distances to and fro. What you didn't notify was the distance to the local transport system, which is a part-time system because it finishes at 5:30 in the evening. But how far would you say the nearest public transport point is?
There is a bus stop at the very bottom of School Lane, so I would say probably about 900 metres to a bus stop. But as you say, the buses are very irregular and no buses at all on a Sunday.
Fair to say they're every 2 hours at that point.
Yeah.
Councillor Lee, you have a question? Thank you.
I was just curious to understand, are there any self-built plots within your ward?
Not currently, but there are plots, as Councillor Andrioli said, there are plots that are available. They're just not within the ownership of the applicant.
Thank you.
And we are planning on allocating self-built plots as part of our neighbourhood plan.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Thank you. Now we turn to the supporter, Andrew Moga. If you'd like to come forward, please. Thank you very much. So you will have 3 minutes from when you start speaking, and the microphone is turned on by just pressing the button at the bottom of the unit. Thank you. And don't forget your microphone.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Hopkins are not developers or land promoters. They run their own fencing business. They're not a volume house builder or developer. This is a family. Regrettably, they're unable to access a home on the open market here as it's cost prohibitive to do so. So they're seeking to self-build their own home with its associated cost savings to house themselves, their 2 young children and elderly parents, cross-subsidised by the sale of other plots. But they want to provide something for the benefit of the local community too, hence the inclusion of 50% of the scheme as affordable homes secured in perpetuity, marketed to those with a parish connection. And members will note there's no objection from strategic planning. In fact, they acknowledge the proposal would meet the needs of types of housing identified on the self-build register and the SHMA. There's no objection from housing. They acknowledge the discount market housing meets the MPPF definition of affordable. There's no objection from drainage, highways, ecology or rights of way. Information has been submitted to address concerns in respect of the oak tree, and it's notable landscape is reserved and mitigation planting could be conditioned for hedgerow loss through the proposed access. The drainage plan is illustrative at this stage, so it can be rerouted to avoid root protection areas, as is the internal layout and road. The site is no less sustainable in terms of accessing facilities in Denmead than the numerous dwellings that already exist at this end of School Lane and Upper Cravick Lane. Officers appear to now accept that the council is failing its statutory duty to meet self-build register numbers, and Tetler King have repeatedly successfully argued at appeal that the weight attributable to self-build plots in such a scenario can be sufficient to outweigh the harms alleged. The tilted balance in the MPPF is engaged here, an argument we have also successfully made numerous times. The suggestion that policy CP2, which is a housing mix policy and bears no mention of self-build, was adopted 2 years prior to the self-build legislation being enacted, somehow constitutes a self-build policy, does not stand up to scrutiny. The attempts by officers to refer to the emerging plan also do not stand up to scrutiny, as it has yet to be submitted for examination or tested at examination, so attracts no weight in decision making. The simple fact is that there is no adopted self-build policy in the district, and therefore paragraph 11D of the framework is engaged. The result is that the benefits of the provision of self-built plots and affordable housing demonstrably outweigh the harms alleged. It's respectfully requested, therefore, that members overturn their officer's recommendation to refuse and approve this scheme, which will address particular unmet housing needs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sticking within your 3 minutes because our timer seemed to be going completely insane there. I don't know what happened there, Matthew. Members, do we have any questions or clarification? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. You've heard the comments made by the parish council and the district councillor with regard to plots availability that exist at the moment. Could you tell me why those are not attractive to you as they're within the built area?
Yeah, so 4 of the what we did was we undertook an alternative sites assessment as part of the application proposals, where we looked at the availability of plots within settlement boundary, looked at various designations such as green space, flood risk, and so on. What we found was there was 11 sites, 4 of those were already built out, and then there were 7 that were in use, so we're not considered to be available at this point in time, so we're not available in terms of being able to be developed.
So the areas that are available, because they've got lots of scrubland on them, are not to your particular development area.
Well, it's not necessarily that they're scrubland. Some of them are in use for other things. For example, they've got car parks and things like this, that they're already in an alternative use, so they're not available for development at this point in time.
Sorry, Chairman, the Green Lane one is open land.
But it's not available to the applicants for development. And the thing is as well, I think on that point is, if that were a suitable site for development, it would have come forward by now, but it hasn't.
Okay, I think you've made your point, Councillor Reid. Members, any other questions for the applicant, supporter? No? Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat if you could switch off the microphone.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, good. So now we come back to our officer. Do you have any comments to make following the public speaking? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't, thanks.
So members, we turn to questions on the reports. Councillor Reid.
Chairman, can I just assure members that Linda Reid is of no relation to me, even though she has the correct way of spelling it. Chairman, the one thing that's been mentioned just once is School Lane. Now, School Lane is 2 variations on a road. Up to the crossroads just prior to this site, it is passable road. From this site onwards to the west, it's probably no more than 8 to 9 feet wide. It is exceedingly difficult to pass vehicles on it. It is also a problem with the drainage on that particular area. And I think members ought to be aware of that beforehand. Now you're looking for me to give a question, aren't you?
Yes, please.
Do you think this road is suitable to take 2-way traffic?
Thank you, Chair. Highway issues were raised at the time of the previous planning applications, from what I can see. Highways have been consulted on this application and raised no objections. The visibility displays have been looked at in detail, which is part of the reason why a large section of hedgerow is coming out on the front boundary. So as I mentioned, it is on this stretch of 60-mile-an-hour limit. But Highways have basically confirmed that they are satisfied with the level of visibility that is proposed, given the low volume of traffic that passes along School Lane.
Any more questions? Councillor Lee.
Yes, I wonder if the officer could help me. I'm looking at page 58. I note, obviously, we have the South Build register, and there's a whole bunch of numbers there, which indicates there's a shortfall of 70 dwellings against the need recorded in the register up to 2020. The applicant mentioned a time lag, I think, between the local plan and the actual act which imposed that duty on us. So I wonder if we could just unpick this bit about the tilted balance and what our duty is, notwithstanding the site may not be appropriate. We can come to that so that we can be clear on what this all means, please. Thank you.
We did consult, as you know, we consulted the strategic policy team on the application, who have, as you know, commented on the figures. They have identified that there is a shortfall of 70 custom and self-build house building plots over that period. So as a result, that shortfall is a material planning consideration that we've included in our assessment of this application. The conclusion in the report deals with the tilted balance issue. Whilst there is a shortfall in house building plots, in this case, given, well, also the increased number of units from the previous applications, the combined impact of the visual harm from the development alongside the impacts on trees and hedgerows is taken to be something that does significantly and demonstrably outweigh any benefits that would be delivered by introducing those custom and self-build plots in this location. So in this case, the conclusion is that that harm outweighs any benefits.
Answer, thank you.
If there are no further questions on the report, members, I think we'll move to debate. Who would like to? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. As I've already explained, School Lane, this section of School Lane is quite a difficult road. Highways, as we know, are not always correct. And there are many occasions when local members have drawn to the attention problem in that area. This is another one. They propose to move the entrance further along, so not to use the existing entrance anyway. The property that it's adjacent to is outside of the local development area. We are under 900 metres from the South Downs National Park. Now, as Mr. Cooper has already identified, this is a parcel of land that was a much bigger holding, and it has been broken up over the last 10 or 12 years. It's fair to say it's caused the parish an awful lot of problems. There are a number of enforcement issues dotted around on this former land holding that are within, as I say, within enforcement. This doesn't meet the criteria. Self-build came out probably not that many years ago, after the local plan that's in existence was published and adopted. We are now on the verge of a new local plan. It's not quite emerging yet because we've got to go through Reg 19 for that to happen. But there are areas within the parish, in the built-up areas or development areas, where development could take place. So there is absolutely no reason at all why some of these sites could not be used for the purpose of self-build. Self-build, the three that we've dealt with now, seem to want to build on an open green field. That says a few things to me. I would go along with the recommendation of the officer that this, once again, is outside the area with no legal rights to qualify. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, I echo what Councillor Reid said. I mean, self or custom home building on the right service sites can, of course, help people to get onto the housing ladder, hopefully with some lower deposit mortgages. So, you know, it's a brilliant scheme, and and I applaud the fact that we actually have a register, and that's great. But as it's just been said, this would appear to be the right development in the wrong location because of the harm that is going to be caused. We have a nature emergency. This is open countryside. It doesn't feel appropriate, and therefore I feel the officer's decision is absolutely right. Thank you.
Councillor Lamy?
I feel that we really do need some self-built plots, but I feel that this one is not in the right place. It's inappropriate, and I cannot see any reason to change the previous decisions because they were all based on good sound reasoning of the local plan, and therefore I will support the officer on this occasion.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move to the vote. So all those in favour of the officer recommendation to refuse this application, can I see those in favour of the refusal? That's all members. Yes. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much indeed. And that application is refused. We will shortly be moving to the next item. I think we need to just swap over the officers. On our agenda is an application for the conversion of a garden outbuilding to ancillary living accommodation at 3 Ways, Heathrow to Wickham. And our presenting officer is Cameron Finch. If you could give us your presentation, please, Cam. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, as said, it's conversion of garden outbuilding to ancillary living accommodation. Okay, so this is the location plan. So just showing the pattern of development, so you can see along Heath Road, you've got the residential dwellings there, in a fairly sort of strong sort of staggered line along there, and then further back, these are quite long gardens. There are some examples of outbuildings within the surrounding area. And then this is the latest aerial photography of the site. So it does show the site before the incidental outbuilding that was constructed on the site. So you can just see there is something behind, but that's the old garage. But again, just showing that building pattern there. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. So what you can see there, just outlined in red, that is the outbuilding that is proposed from the conversion from the incidental into the ancillary annex. This is just a sort of refresh. Members may remember a couple of years ago we did have this site in as well for an extension to the dwelling. So this hasn't yet been constructed, but it's just to sort of give an idea of what they've got permission for to construct in addition to the outbuilding they've already have. So we have the proposed floor plan for the conversion. So you've got a kitchen, living area and dining space in the one part towards the rear of the building. We then have hallway and utility, and then the bedroom is then it's a single bedroom with ensuite bathroom, and then they've got storage space as well. So this is a roof plan. So it is a gabled roof, and then you've got the 2 roof lights there. And then finally, elevations. The elevations here, it says proposed elevations, but this is as it appears as existing, as we'll see in the photographs that I've got later on. So here we are. So this is the outbuilding as it appears. So no changes externally to this. So this is looking towards the host dwelling. So it's been finished in the cathedral cladding, and you can see there the gabled roof as well, 2 roof lights, and then the French doors. So just for reference, this is the living room end of the building. And then looking at it from the other end, from towards the host dwelling, just the other end of the outbuilding there. So this is the bathroom end. And the side elevations, so just to show it's set off from the side boundaries with the neighbours there. And then just some further site photographs there as well, just showing boundary treatment, and also just a view out of that side window looking towards a neighbouring dwelling. So in conclusion, the recommendation is to permit the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cameron. There is an update on the on our update sheet, isn't there, to condition 3? Could you just explain that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the update to condition 3 is just to tighten the wording around the potential use of the outbuilding, just to include holiday lets and Airbnbs, as well as the potential to sever it and use it as an independent dwelling. So we've just tightened the wording around that.
So at no time will it be sold off as a separate dwelling or used as an independent unit of accommodation or for any sort of holiday use. That's quite clear in that condition, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Great, so lovely, thank you. So we now move to the public speaking element. So we have 2 objectors first, Joseph McCarthy and Andrew Kimber. If you gentlemen would like to come forward, you will have 3 minutes between you. Have you decided how you're going to allocate the time? Okay, lovely, and your colleague will be able to answer questions as well. Thank you. And the microphone is switched on by just pressing the button at the bottom of the unit. When you're ready, you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so we're here today to talk about 2301-099 of the FUL, but I'd like to refer back to the 20-02207 HOO, the original application that included an independent 14.5 by 6 metres annex. Pre-application advice was given by Cameron, and I paraphrase, I do not consider there is merit to considering a planning application for the annex accommodation of this scale. A number of minor amendments have been suggested to reduce the outbuilding size. However, a fundamental change should be considered in order to align with the policy expectation where there's a general presumption against new development and the creation of additional new dwellings in the countryside. However, no fundamental changes have occurred. The applicant referred to the permitted development of a garage and gym of a similar footprint. This was never built. You can see the blockwork image. Instead, a 1-bedroomed annex was built. This significant structure is a separate self-contained dwelling house. It is not materially different from the annex proposal that was rejected by Cameron Finch. He now states the outbuilding is close to the host dwelling. It is not, being 20 metres behind the main dwelling house. The staggered build line results in it being further from Heathrow than any other dwelling. Both objections had many objections, 14 and 11 from immediate neighbours. On both occasions, the parish council concerns included backfill development, size of the annex and loss of amenity for neighbours. Expert opinion from Chris Ward of BTC Planning also concluded such a development would result in loss of amenity, not least because dwelling houses are in constant use compared to an incidental building such as a garage or gym. We've already experienced intrusive noise from radio, telephone calls, etc. contrary to this. Loss of privacy from Greenacre, where the kitchen and bedroom windows are now in direct line of sight of another dwelling house's windows. The amenity of residents of Cherry Cottage, Greenacre and Home Copse is affected by light pollution from windows, skylights and security lights, and is now illuminates the previously dark countryside skies. The Government National Space Standard for a 3-bedroom bungalow for 4-person occupation is 74 square metres. The new dwelling house has 75 square metres of internal area. It is 15 metres by 5 metres. Contrary to the latest planning officer's report, what is being built is of the size and scale that should be considered a new dwelling house. The planning officer also highlights that the application site is an area where additional residential units are existed, yet now recommends approval, which is a complete U-turn from his original stance. The original pre-application advice stated the annex had no merit and fundamental changes required. It is clear there's been no fundamental change. We therefore respectfully ask the committee to reject the proposal. The only permission granted was for a garage and gym that was never built. The application ignored the planning officer's original advice, built what they wanted where they wanted. This is not change of use, it should be retrospective planning.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
it was so fast.
No. Well, you did very well to keep within your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions of clarification for either of our local residents, please? Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can you just expand on, you mentioned noise and so on. Is that tool making noise with radios, or is it something more than that?
This has been where other people from outside the family have stayed in the accommodation and been in the garden. I've been in my little greenhouse, which you can see alongside there. And, you know, I can hear them in there. My wife, when she's been in the garden, the same way. And there's been sort of people coming outside having a fag and on the telephone. You know, it's not been pleasant. And recently, the last couple of weeks, certainly there's been nobody in there other than the odd time at night, like of an evening.
And can you just say a bit more about the lighting? You're suggesting there may be floodlights, or?
There's a floodlight on the end of the building, which it's in one of the pictures. Can you scroll to another picture? So you can see, oh, you can't see the side of it there, but there's a great big floodlight there, and you can see that's the bedroom lit up. On one of the other images, you can see the skylights, and we've seen shafts of light come out of there. We're very close to the national park here. You know, we're surrounded by it. And, you know, this light, there's another image showing it lighting up the back of our house, the neighbours' houses. You know, it's just not nice, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you show the image of the back of the house, please? There, and you can see the floodlight coming across the fence there. And, you know, we've got to have our bedroom curtains shut at night because this comes on at all hours as well.
Thank you.
I think we could add a lighting condition, Councillor Lee, to cover that issue. Okay. Any other questions, members? Right. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. If you could just switch off the microphone as you go. Thank you. And our next public speaker is the supporter, Eric Cox. If you could come forward, please, Mr. Cox. Thank you very much. You also will have 3 minutes when you started speaking. That's it. When you're ready. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I speak on behalf of the applicant. I have read your officer's report. It is thorough and explains the policy background against which this application is to be determined. It also very fairly examines the concerns of the objectors. Like all planning authorities throughout the country, you have regard to section 38(6) and determine applications in accordance with the development plan unless outweighed by other material planning considerations. In this instance, your officers have addressed all the matters which need to be satisfied. Impact on neighbours, visual amenity, noise, lighting, highways, precedent, to name a few. On each of these issues, your officers, following a detailed site visit, are satisfied that all normal criteria and standards are met. There are no matters where any sustainable planning objections can be made. I am a retired planning consultant, and like you, know that there are occasions when local people genuinely perceive their objections should override the development control standards you quite properly apply to all applications. As I say, I believe, and neither does your officer, none of these standards are breached here. The building itself is lawful and will remain. Most importantly, the officers have recommended planning condition number 3. It's now in a revised form, but that is perfectly acceptable to my client, and we ask that you approve the application subject to the conditions recommended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the agent? No? Thank you very much. If you could just switch off the microphone.
Yes.
As you go. Thank you. Cameron, do you have anything to add following the contributions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just thought I would clarify the timeline with the application, just because I know previous advice and things came up just in the comments there. So when originally we did undertake pre-application advice for both the house and an outbuilding at the time. It was decided planning would not permit something of this size, but they are able to exercise their PD rights. So they've exercised their PD rights, and we now have to look at the use of the building, as that's what they want to change. It is lawful. We've checked that over, including with our enforcement team previously. So the assessment here is effectively that can this building be sustainably controlled through a condition that we've recommended as an annex, and the conclusion that we've come to is in this situation it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorna, we did mention a new lighting condition. Do you have something you could go through, please?
Certainly, Chair. In considering the impacts that we're hearing and from the neighbours in particular, it wouldn't be unreasonable at all to ask for details, including luminance level and light spill of any lighting to be attached to the annex building shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. And the reason would be in the interest of the visual and the neighbour community.
So we could ask them to put in a different sort of light at the front that wasn't going to be so bright.
We can look at that through the details in compliance,
Yeah.
given the scale of the building and the use change. I think that's justified.
Thank you. Okay, members, so we now move to questions on the report. If you've got any questions for our officers, if you could ask them now. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to page 89 and the comments that the Parish Council have made. Sorry, page 90, regarding the drainage issues. If you can comment on that, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the building as existing has been plugged into the existing drainage solution for the site, which includes a septic tank. It's been set up to take 5 people. So that doesn't represent an increase of the number of people that are currently on the site. It's someone moving out of the house who's there as existing and then into the annex. So it's using an existing solution, which is already in use with the incidental building. We've had a look over that and we consider that is acceptable. And as we say, there isn't additional load or anything like that because it is someone in the house who's moving into the annex. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I've just a couple of quick things, I hope. The size of the building, I don't see a size given in your report. There is a plan, but it doesn't have a scale to it. We've heard from an objector that the building is 15 by 5 meters. Does that feel approximately right, given your knowledge of the site?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so that does generally accord with the measurements that we've taken from the plans.
Okay. In which case, if I may, Chair, follow up on that, when the suggestion here in the report is that this is a small, I can't find the line now, but essentially that it's too small to be considered as a permanent dwelling. And I just wondered on what basis that assessment had been made. We do, I think, sometimes approve permanent dwellings smaller than 15 by 5 meters.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the way that it's been done, it's sort of a case, well, as we know, it's case by case. The feeling being that this is the appropriate size for a residential annex, broadly in line with other similar examples that we've approved in the district. And yeah, as I say, we feel there's a suitable reliance on it, that it's not sort of too large. And as an example, as an annex, and that's why we've classed it as it being sort of too small to sort of sever. So that's where that's come from. Thank you, Chair.
Just a minute, Councillor Lee, could I just ask, so did you say that this could have been built without any planning application under permitted development rights?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this building, as it is lawful in that it's an incidental outbuilding. So the way that we've sort of checked this over in the past, there was a lawful development certificate that came in for an outbuilding. This outbuilding is not the same as what was allowed through there, but our enforcement team have been involved with this site and have been able to measure up and ensure that it complies with the schedule for outbuildings, so Class E. So this building falls under that schedule. It's an incidental building, so the use is currently in use as a gym and as an office. We have been able to confirm that I've been inside the building. And so simply with this application, even if it was to be refused, the building is still lawful, so it would remain.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
I think Cameron may have answered my question. It was really this case of the presumption against development in the countryside, which is the requirement, and yet here we are having a change of use of a building into something which is effectively a dwelling. So I'm sort of conflicted. I need to if you can reconcile that conflict in my mind, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so as we say, the purpose of what the applicants want to use it for is a residential annex. So we do have condition 3, which, as we say, we've amended and sort of tightened the wording of it, which effectively means that it has to remain in use with the dwelling. So a subservient piece of living accommodation, effectively, that condition we feel is sufficient to prevent it from being split off into a separate dwelling. As we say, in terms of things like the size, we've been to site and done a site visit, and the feeling is that broadly it is an acceptable size for a residential annex. But yes, as I say, we feel we can control this through that condition 3 suitably. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Chair, on page 92, there is a paragraph there. There are a number of outbuildings within the rear gardens of various sizes within the surrounding area. How many of these other buildings have got a similar type of permissions?
Thank you, Chair. So we haven't done a sort of in-depth look into this. I think most of them are probably incidental. So that would be so what the use of this is now. So for things like storage, home offices and things like that. But as we say, we've looked at this one individually and considered that it's acceptable size to go over to residential annex. Thank you.
Councillor Levy.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to remember that we have a recommended minimum size for a single bedroom dwelling, the same as we do for 2 and 3 bedroom. And this would be the same size as what we would recommend for a single bedroom dwelling. So therefore, is it a dwelling or is it an annex?
Chair, shall I give this question a go again? I think originally we thought of looking at it tantamount to a new dwelling because of its size. However, that's been tested legally with a different proposal as well following that, and tested legally again. The size of it does make it a permitted development if it's incidental. This change of use would be controlled through a condition to ensure that it isn't a dwelling. It's no more than many annexes that we approve, it's much bigger. So I think that's making us more concerned and considering it more like a dwelling house. However, just to reassure you, it isn't, because of the condition that we have updated and strengthened, as suggested by Councillor Rutter.
Councillor Reid.
Chairman, whilst we're looking at the proposed lighting, would it be possible to cover it also by the Veluxes? They are so close. This particular application site has already been mentioned by the members of the public, have been surrounded by the local South Downs National Park, which has a dark skies policy. This is 0.05 meters from that boundary.
You mean kilometres?
No, miles. Miles. For the first time, or sorry, second time, we've actually using English phraseology. Yes, miles. So you are exceedingly close. So is it possible to tie in the lighting and possible shields on these particular applications?
Thank you, Chair. We've been thinking about this. I think it's quite difficult because we're only really considering the use of the building and the lighting on the outside of the building. We've heard the harm expressed by the neighbours in the parish there, and that's from external lighting. And that would obviously, the condition that we've already proposing will protect the night skies, but the VLAX windows themselves, often we would attach a condition restricting it or for blinds from the internal light. But I think that's a bit more difficult in this case because we're really conditioning the use of the buildings. I think that's a bit more difficult to do in this case.
Would not be taken as an informative?
I suppose, how would you like that to be expressed? What would you like to advise the applicants? Just to be considerate of the dark night skies policy, something like that.
I think that's a good suggestion.
That's a good suggestion.
We'll add an informative for the applicant. Any more questions on the report, members? No, so we move to debate. I'd like to just start it off then. I'm pleased that we've beefed up condition 3 so that there's no question of the actual use of this except as an annex directly connect. I'm sorry, we've ended public contributions, sorry. So that is very, very clear, and I'm sure the applicant has taken that into account. We will look again at the lighting. We've conditioned that. We will condition that as part of this application so that we can tone that down as well and be more considerate to the neighbours. I would ask the applicant to bear in mind that it is an annex to the house and they do have close neighbours who have been impacted by noise, and to take that into consideration when using the annex, and to invite any guests or members of the family to take that into account as well. And excessive noise, of course, can be addressed through other areas of council policy. And I think an informative requesting the applicant to shield those lights, skylights, so as to help to protect the dark night skies of the National Park is completely reasonable. And I hope that they will take account of that as well. But otherwise, I don't think there are planning reasons that we can turn this down, particularly given the permitted development rights that the government has approved over the years, allowing people to build quite significant dwelling structures in their gardens. So I will be supporting the officer recommendation with those extra conditions as noted. Any further contributions to debate? Councillor Lee.
Yeah, yes, I agree, Chair. This is tricky in planning terms. However, these are very slim or thin slices of property, and there's no doubt that, you know, if this gets approved, that's going to signpost to neighbours that this is an acceptable way to proceed. In a sense, you know, with noise and light, that's a sort of a mild urbanisation in a way. So I accept the objectors' concerns, but I accept that we're going to deal with the lights. I hope the VLAX as well will be addressed, but it is concerning. So I'm a bit conflicted.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I too am conflicted in the sense that I thought that the objectors made very plausible or raised very plausible problems they face with this building. It is, however, under permitted development rights, and that means there is a right in law. And I don't think what we are determining here today is whether this building is lawful. We're deciding whether we wish to approve certain categories of use. And I think we have been as careful as we can to tie those down. So yes, I don't think this is great, but I don't think it's within our power as a committee to go further than what we've been asked to do. EDR exists.
If there's no further debate, we'll move to the decision. So this application with the updated conditions as discussed is recommended for approval. Can I see those in favour of approval, please? Those against? And abstentions? 2 abstentions? Sorry, can we do that again? Those in favour? And those against? And abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay, 7 for, 2 abstentions. So that application is approved. Thank you very much.
Chairman, could I just make a comment with regards to the visual displays? I had difficulty in reading those from my distance. I don't know what members of the public actually managed to see, to be quite honest.
It's a long-standing problem, Chair, in terms of the projector screen, which is something that the Guildhall do manage. So we will continue to always look at the plans and see what we can do, but we've got to work with what we've got. We do try to get good photographs.
We could try and switch off the lights, maybe that would make it a bit clearer.
We used to turn the lights off in the centre.
We'll try that for the next application, see if it improves. Try it the other way around, Matthew. Yeah, let's try it like that for a while, Matthew. Thank you. Right, we now move to item 9 on our agenda, which is the demolition of an existing dwelling to allow for replacement dwelling and 2 new properties with associated landscaping at Wildwood, Fairfield Road in Shawford. And our presenting officer is Catherine Watson. Good morning, Catherine, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for the demolition of an existing dwelling and the construction of 3 dwellings. Here we have the location plan. So the property is situated in South Down, which is a settlement which has a settlement boundary. Here we have the existing block and location plan. So on the left is the block plan. On the right is the location plan, and the existing dwelling is towards the north of the plot. Here we have an aerial site photo. So the red line is the site. The red pentagon is
denoting where the existing building is. From this site photo, you can see that the western and southern boundaries have trees along them and hedging to the rear as well. Here we have the proposed site plan. So in the dotted red line is the existing dwelling. The replacement for that dwelling, plot 1, is situated towards the east of the site, with plots 2 and 3 towards the west of the site, fronting Fairfield Road. On the site plan also, you can see that where the existing trees are to be retained, so on the northern, western and southern boundaries, as well as some internal to the site. Can also see the existing hedging along the western, northern and eastern boundaries, and areas of proposed hedging and proposed trees, which are the darker green circles. Here we have a drainage plan. This has changed slightly in that the third paragraph down refers to a package treatment plant, which was proposed to deal with the foul and surface water drainage. This is now not the case, and nutrient credits have been agreed with the Grange estate. So this just I've included this plan just to show the line of the foul drainage where it runs throughout the property. And so here we have the proposed ground floor plan for house 1. That's the house to the east. You'll see it has an attached carport, which is capable of housing 2 vehicles. And then the first floor plan, so we can see that the bedrooms, and then there's a void to create a sort of atrium effect over the living and dining area. And here we have the elevations. So at the top, we've got the north elevation, which is the front of the property. At the bottom is the west elevation. And then the south elevation at the top here, which is the rear, and the east elevation at the bottom. And so here we have the ground and first floor plans of house 2. Ground floor at the top, first floor at the bottom there. And then the second floor plan for house 2 and detached garage, which you can also see the elevations of at the bottom of the screen. And then the front and rear elevations for house 2. So front at the top, rear at the bottom. And then the side, so the south and north elevations, south at the top, north at the bottom. And then here we have proposed ground and first floor plans for house 3. So again, at the top, we've got the ground floor, bottom, first floor, and then there's a second floor plan for house 3. And then we've got the front at the top and the rear at the bottom elevations. And again, the 2 side elevations. So here we have photos. So on the left-hand side, we're looking from the south of the existing dwelling towards that existing dwelling. And then on the right, there's the garden along the side of the property, which looks towards the boundary of the site with Fairfield Road. And you'll see there's a beech hedge along that boundary. And then looking east and west within the site, so you'll note the large area of garden proportionate to the size of the existing dwelling. And then here we have the existing access. So on the left, this is looking out from within the property, and on the right, looking in to the property. And then we've got photographs here of the Fairfield Road boundary from the north. That's on the left-hand side. So we're looking north, and just in the middle here is the current access, and you'll see the hedging along both sides of the road. And on the right-hand side, this is looking from the south. So the access is sort of towards the back of the picture. And again, it just shows that the predominance of hedged boundaries along this road, interspersed with trees.
And that concludes my presentation. My recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions contained within my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kat. Okay, we now move to public speaking. We have our first speaker and objector, Ian Donoghue. Ian, you have 3 minutes when you started speaking, and you know the routine. Thank you.
Chairman, councillors, I represent the owners of Laurel Cottage, which borders the site to the north. The objections to the application are as follows. First of all, housing mix. Policy CP2 of the local plan states that a majority of homes should be in the form of 2 and 3 bed houses unless local circumstances indicate an alternative approach. However, the proposal is for 3 5-bed houses, which is contrary to policy. The applicant's defence in terms of local circumstances is that, firstly, introducing 2 and 3 beds would either depreciate the neighbouring property's value due to increased density or produce very expensive 2 and 3 bed houses. Secondly, the developer needs a scheme that is financially viable. Well, neither of these factors are material considerations that are relevant to the determination of the application and do not justify a departure from the requirements of CP2. In the planning system, there's no obligation to ensure schemes are financially viable, especially when they do not help deliver policy objectives in terms of housing mix. In terms of design and layout, the upshot of trying to squeeze 3 5-bed houses onto the site resulted in a convoluted layout with 2 houses closed onto the front and a 5-bed property shoehorned into the rear. It should be noted that there are no context plans showing the relationship of the development to neighbouring properties and how it would fit into the character of the area or the street scene. If these plans were available, it would clearly show the detrimental impact on the character and the overdevelopment compared to other properties within Fairfield Road. In terms of the impact on the neighbour, when I stood in the rear rooms and garden of Laurel Cottage, it was evident that the rear dwelling, which is plot 1, would project significantly above the hedge. The 2-storey blank elevation of the garage will directly face Laurel Cottage and will appear overbearing in the garden. Also of concern is the glazed 2-storey gable feature situated in the northern elevation of plot 1. The windows will result in a clear line of sight into garden and the rear rooms of Laurel Cottage. Chairman, it's my view that a submitted application is unacceptable in terms of housing mix, design, impact on character and the neighbouring amenities, and therefore is contrary to policy. However, notwithstanding the objections, if you as committee are minded to grant permission, could I suggest a couple of amendments? Plot 1 should be moved further south from the northern boundary, and the rear elevation should be in line with the split between plots 2 and 3. In addition, the poor orientation should be addressed. Plot 1 should be parallel to the rear boundary of plot 2. This would move the gable away from the boundary and reduce the overbearing impact. And finally, the gallery window should be fixed and obscure glazed. Councillor, I urge you to refuse the application. However, if you do consider the application acceptable in principle, can I ask you to recommend delegating the application to negotiate suggested amendments? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Donoghue. Members, do we have any questions of clarification? No? Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Thank you. And now we have a supporter, Dale Whitfield. Mr. Whitfield, if you'd like to come forward. You also have 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speak today. I'll keep it very brief, and I just want to highlight the support that we've had from the local authority. It all started with a positive pre-app, which encouraged us to design what you see today and the aesthetics of each proposal. This positivity has continued through the planning application. We have no consultee objections. There's only 6 neighbouring objections, which for a scheme of this magnitude is very low. We have case officer's recommendation for approval. The officer's report is very positive and it shows that we comply with all policy, including CP2, housing mix due to area demographics. Case officer is a specialist in their own right and they're employed to protect neighbouring interests and local interests. Therefore, I think their opinion is finite and takes precedent over everyone else's. I'll add that we're only here today out of a formality because we've received 6 neighbouring objections. Any other local authority that doesn't have this requirement would be through with approval by now. Finally, last point I'll make is that we come here today with recommendation for approval. If it's refused today, we're only going to appeal and going to appeal with recommendation plus a case officer's report that proves we comply with all relevant local policy. There's only going to be one outcome. So I'd encourage you to protect your case officer and avoid wasting anyone's time or money. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. If you'd like to just remain and see if members have any questions of clarification. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I understand that plot 1 replaces the large existing house. So my first question was any consideration given to modernising and remodelling that existing building? And following on from that, second question, what plans may there be to reuse materials from the existing building in order to capture the embedded carbon, if that's the right phrase? Thank you.
Yeah, we looked at refurbing the existing property. It has signs of subsidence through structural cracking. Through speaking with builders, we determined that refurbishment would cost about £500,000. To rebuild a slightly smaller property, of course, you're VAT exempt. So we'd be looking at about £250,000 increase, so 750 in total. Given that there's lesser building regulation standards to refurbish the existing house, it would never perform to the same standards as new build. Therefore, I mean, the cost increase is well worth it, seeing as all of the new thermal standards will be hitting with modern day building regulations. With regards to reusing materials, generally what will happen is the house will be broken down and created into hardcore, which will then be used to build up any site levels underneath roads. Ground bearing slabs, you always have 150 millimeters of hardcore beneath them. With that in mind, we shouldn't actually have to bring any more hardcore into site. We can just reuse the existing building, and there'll be very little muck away then casting material on and off site, which is only a benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Can you just comment on, are you just going to meet building regulation standards, or are you going to exceed that in terms of thermal energy efficiency and renewables and so on?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to meet building regulation standards, but obviously the changes that were made last year are borderline passive standards. The regulations are getting so complex now that they're actually quite hard to hit. Alongside that, we need to meet SAP assessment, so standard assessment procedures, and that is an improvement on the building regulations anyway. We couldn't pass SAP with a gas boiler, such as what the existing plot 1 has. We could only pass SAP approval with solar PV, air source heat pump, a considerable level of insulation, and also optimizing solar gain as well, heat the property.
Can I just clarify? So did you say you're quite close to passive standard?
Yes, modern building regulation standards, thermal values of the amount of insulation that you need to achieve, the U values are very close to passive.
Okay, but you're not going to get a
We're not hitting
passive
passive
assessment. Okay, thank you.
We do have a strict condition on a construction management plan, which you'll be aware of. One of the characteristics of the area is it's quite a narrow road, access road, with wide grass verges. So can you reassure us and local residents that you will be protecting those verges and that all construction vehicles will be kept on site?
Yes, absolutely. The applicant actually took it upon themselves to have a neighbourhood meeting before we lodged the planning application. and about 6 or 7 households of the area came around to his house, and we all had a meeting about it and discussed that, and that was highlighted by them as a matter of concern, bringing dirt onto the road, destroying the verges, parking on the road as well. And we've made it very clear to them that we're going to avoid that. Obviously, building a design like this in phases, there's going to be an abundance of space on site for material storage, parking, storing any sort of muck away or anything like that. So I think that's in hand.
Thank you. Any more questions for the applicant? No? Thank you very much. If you could just switch off the microphone.
Thank you very much.
Catherine, do you have any updates following those contributions?
No, Chair. Thank you.
So members, we turn to questions on the report. Any questions for our officer? Councillor Laming.
Yes, there are several questions on this, being the ward councillor in this area. The whole design of this is pushing houses very close together on the frontage that we have, which is entirely different to the rest of the neighbourhood, where you've got large houses on large plots with plenty of space between the houses. On this application, they're very close together. And when we look at the house at the rear, that's very close to the boundary of the properties on Southdown Road. So how are we going to prevent overlooking and incursion onto that? Because we're changing the whole essence of the neighbourhood of Fairfield Road in this particular instance.
Thank you, Chair. The impact on neighbour amenity has been considered, and the my report, page 115, the bottom paragraph talks about the distances between the site and the neighbouring properties. It was considered that due to those distances, there wouldn't be any significant harm caused by overlooking, overbearing, overshadowing, which are the usual things that we consider when we're looking at neighbour amenity. So that has been addressed satisfactorily. With regards to plots 2 and 3 at the front of the site, these plots are still, yes, it's an increase in the sort of area of development on the plot, but these 2 plots still have generous gardens. They're in so they're set back from the road. There's a high level of screening from the hedging and the trees, and the new trees and new hedging that will be brought in. So it's not considered that these are contrary to the character of the area. Members will be aware that this road has been subject to a number of developments for multiple dwellings on plots. It does have a character, and the main character is the boundary treatments, which are hedging and trees predominantly, and houses set back from the road. Plots 2 and 3 are set back, and so it is with the design. There's no particular one style of design throughout the road, so these designs were considered to be appropriate and of high quality, such as we would want to see such as we would like to see in this area. Thank you, Chair.
If I may follow up on that, there is no other plots on Fairfield Road that have been built with 2 houses side by side on the frontage. That's the main area of the question. And if I may ask another question, Chair, what arrangements are there going to be for the sewage? Because we've had an increase in the number of properties in this area, and it results in a lot of flooding at the bottom in Otterbourne, where the pipe is far too small to accommodate that. So the residents really need some assurance that this is going to be addressed, because it's going to become a regular feature.
Thank you, Chair. With the sewage, there's 2 parts to that. There's the surface water, as you've mentioned, and the foul sewage. The current site is on linked to the mains, but the original proposal was to install a package treatment plant which would then flow into the main sewer. This was not considered to be appropriate by Natural England in terms of the addressing the nutrient load, because it effectively then pushed it further into the mains sewer. So consultation has been sought with Natural England and their recommendation, and they also noted that this would be the recommendation of the Environment Agency as well, is that they link up, all the properties link up to the main sewer. In terms of surface water flooding, condition 11 on page 121 covers details of foul and surface water drainage to be submitted, and the drainage engineer also did comment on the fact that a very efficient sustainable drainage system for dealing with surface water would have to be installed on the site precisely to avoid surface water from going onto the road. So we can control that very tightly, and the drainage engineer would be consulted on any discharge of that condition. If it's not acceptable what's put forward, then the condition wouldn't be discharged. So that I'm confident the applicant will seek to satisfactorily address that issue. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it's just that we have a tremendous problem with the sewage at the bottom of Otterbourne, and that's right close to the River Bourne, which feeds Southern Water.
I think you've raised, and I think that question's been answered. Thank you, Councillor Laming. Councillor Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to one of the comments the objector said, Mr. Donoghue. He mentioned that the height of the buildings were above the trees, and there was concern about impact on zones of open space overlooking. I wonder if Catherine could just unpick that for me. Is that because we're removing trees or reducing height of trees, and is there anything we can do about it?
Thank you, Chair. There are a couple of small trees that are being removed on the front boundary to facilitate the two new vehicular accesses. However, the majority of the trees will be retained, including the very large tree on the front boundary, which you can see here. Existing hedging will be retained where possible. The existing trees along all of the other boundaries will be retained, and there's a number of fruit trees which fall within the middle of the site, which will be relocated elsewhere within the site to facilitate the development. So the site is very well enclosed with the hedging and the trees as existing and proposed. So the impact, any potential impact on neighbour amenity would be minimised. The fact that the new dwelling would rise above the hedge line, that in itself doesn't necessarily cause harm. It'd be a visual change, but it wouldn't impact on, as I say, the three main areas of neighbour amenity, which is overlooking, overshadowing, overbearing. The other neighbouring properties at such distance that wouldn't be an issue, a significant issue in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll move to debate. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. There are one or two things about this particular application that I feel pretty uncertain about. Plot number 2, the property itself, the built form, apart from a small passageway down the possible side, literally runs from boundary to boundary. All three properties are replacing a 2-storey property with 3 stories. The view from Fairfield Road must be like a continual build with plots 1 and 2. Very little gaps between them. Literally a footpath in each case. The proportion of amenity land for a 5-bedroom on plots 2 and 3 seems very low, in my way of thinking. I do have, this seems to be shoehorning in as much as they can possibly get away with at the time. I'm not convinced this is the right application to approve. And the fact of being threatened in the public session as to what will happen without didn't enthuse me at all. So I'm just concerned about the development there. It's very much taller than what is originally there, and it's been literally shoehorned in to the site. I'm not sure I can actually go along with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I tend to agree that threatening the planning committee with going straight to appeal if we refuse your application is not a good policy on the part of the applicant. And I would recommend that future applicants don't do that, because it just gets our backs up. Nevertheless, it is a consideration that we always bear in mind. From my point of view, I agree with Councillor Reid that it is a case of shoehorning 3 large properties onto the site of an existing 1 property. However, the gap between lots 1 and 2 is basically the garages. People don't seem to want huge gardens these days, so you know, if you don't want a big garden but you want a big house, these are going to be the plots for you, aren't they? If you look further afield, there are plenty of examples within a couple of 100 yards or so of this site, where houses are equally close together, if not more close together. So whilst I agree with you that it is a bit of a squeezing, you certainly couldn't get any more than 3 on this plot. It's probably at the limit of this site to put 3 on here. I think it's a shame in terms of CP2 that we are faced with 3 large houses, and that our policy of trying to encourage more smaller houses is not being adhered to in this case. But we do have the get out clause that says if it's the prevailing feature in the area that they're larger houses, then you are allowed to build larger houses, and that's in our planning policy, so it's acceptable. I don't think there are any planning reasons for refusing this. I've looked at the overlooking issue, which was raised by the objector. I think the careful design of the houses and the way that they're looking and the distances between these and the neighbouring properties mean that there is no effective overlooking, or windows that possibly could overlook our obscured bathroom windows and so on. That the careful positioning of garages and so on it means that there isn't effectively any overlooking that I can see. It's efficient use of the land effectively. So I'm content with the officer recommendation, with the very strict conditions that we have. Councillor Laming, you've got debates. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur with Councillor Reid on many of the points. The whole character of the neighbourhood is going to be changed by putting these houses so close together. There is no other house that is that close in the whole of that road in that area. So therefore we're changing the whole character of the area. So therefore I cannot support it, and I don't like being threatened either.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I did go and view the area yesterday after our other site visit, just to familiarise myself with the area. There are other areas that have been redeveloped with large properties. Yes, I agree. They are rather big properties, but that's how it is in this street, and I'm happy to support this application.
Councillor Lee.
I'd just like to refer back to Councillor Edwards prompted me to think about whole life carbon, embodied carbon, and the perverse VAT exempt for rebuild, rather than encourage them to repurpose the building. And the developer indicated that materials will be reused. That's a maybe. Is there anything we can do about strengthening that maybe to more of a certainty? You know, with all of this is going to contribute to whole life carbon. If we had a baseline, if we have a climate emergency, a nature emergency, we should be doing more to ensure that the impacts on the environment are minimized. Thank you.
I think that's going to be addressed in our new local plan, Councillor Lee. Right, if there's no more debate, we move to the decision. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approval, please? And those against? So that application is approved. Thank you very much. And I think that is the end of the formal matters for today's planning committee. Members, if you could just hold on at the end, please. Thank you.